Sup Joe with the logical conclusion of anime reviews. I'm going to break down the latest controversy with Funimation's dub of Kobayashi Dragon Maid. Let's get right into it. There are 3 different accusations against Jamie Marchi, who is the dub scriptwriter for the show. When I was discussing this, I found people often jumping between the 3 points, so I think it's important to address them individually. That Marchi inserted a pro-feminist messaging into Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. That the way that Marchi rewrote the joke was inconsistent with Zuko and Turo's character. That any change Marchi made to the original dialogue is cultural imperialism, or at the least, ruining the purity of the original artwork. So let's check out the original scene.
何ですかその格好。いつも言われるから露出度を抑えたんだ。どうかな。次は体を変えるといいですよ。
Luriko changed her outfit to be less gregarious because of social pressure. So Turo says you should change your body next. Now the joke is Zuko, even in a sweatshirt and sweatpants, still stands out because of her huge breasts. Let's check the dub.
What are you wearing that for? Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves. So I changed clothes.
Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
Huh?
So here the joke is the patriarchy is hypocritical. They are saying the same people that shame her for wearing such gregarious outfits really like seeing her in them, and they will be begging her to change back. I don't feel she is guilty of inserting feminist ideology into this scene, calling society hypocritical for complaining about sexually dressed girls, but then not so secretly being attracted to sexually dressed girls isn't really a feminist talking point. It's just an observation that is true. I don't really see how the joke's message is offensive or even feminist ideology. It seems what people are zeroing in on is Luriko's use of the word patriarchy. I think Luriko is being sarcastic here. She's saying patriarchy instead of saying people to add humor to her line. The argument against this is that many people feel Luriko is not capable of sarcasm because she is new to the culture, having just been summoned at the beginning of the show. I'm not as convinced and think Luriko is capable of sarcasm. She seems to be aware of some of the complexities of Turo and Kobayashi's relationship and tries to be supportive but not intrusive, which shows intelligence. But sure, let's say she wasn't being sarcastic. How is Zuko believing in the patriarchy advancing feminism messaging? The patriarchy is a thing that some people do believe in. If Matt Stone and Trey Parker had a character who believed in the patriarchy, none of us would think that they were trying to advance feminism ideologies. Point is, having one character believing in the patriarchy doesn't really move the feminist messaging needle much. That the way that Marchi rewrote the joke was inconsistent with Luriko and Turo's character. I think it's debatable if the scene was out of character for Turo, but both versions. Turo's character is she's a ditz. She doesn't really come up with many jokes throughout the show. In this scene, she comes up with a joke in both versions. Is the dub joke a bit more sophisticated, thus more out of Turo's character? I guess you can make this argument. However, I feel like at this point you are splitting hairs. I don't really see a huge difference in the way that Turo acts in either version that really constitutes the accusation against Marchi that she ruined Turo's character. That any change Marchi made to the original dialogue is cultural imperialism, or at least ruining the purity of the original artwork. I think it's important to point out that Jamie Marchi didn't invent localization. The history of localization of Japanese anime goes back to at least the 70s with Star Blazers, the dub of space battleship Yamamoto. They had censored the violence and fan service scenes for it to be broadcast in America. Also, if you were a company that wanted to dub an anime and broadcast it to kids in America, you would be a fool not to censor it and meet the cultural standards for what's acceptable to show to kids. You have put money and work into bringing a series that you like to a foreign audience to view. Do you want your series that you put this time and effort into bringing over to be canceled because some PTA moms are throwing tantrums over a scene where you see too much blood or when a heroine is showing too much skin? Of course, a letter writing campaign is not how you want your series to end. so centering is the only logical option. Miss Kobayashi Dragon Maid is in a bit of a different boat than various kid shows that have broadcast in America. It is available on Funimation, which is a subscription internet service. Thus, it isn't subjugated to the same rules as Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! And it also is not a kid show, so why localize it? Well, cultural differences and a different language. Earlier, we saw Luako's sub-dialogue. Everyone was always saying something to me, so I tried toning down the exposure. How is it? However, that is not a direct translation of what she said. According to Biogen X2B, everyone has always saying something, so I turned down the humidity. Figure of speech is a more accurate representation of the actual Japanese being said. So is the person that wrote the subtitles also a cultural imperialist? They didn't give us the literal Japanese either. Here's the truth. Anime is in Japanese and intended for Japanese culture. Not speaking Japanese is a barrier to understanding, as is not understanding Japanese culture. Monogatari is an example of a series that I love, but there's also tons of language puns that I don't get, and playing with what title to call people that I don't get. Idioms are different in Japanese than in English. So if the dubbers put the direct translations of the idiom into English, maybe every once in a while we would figure it out, but many times we would not get it. In other words, making the series easier to understand for its intended audience, aka people who aren't experts on Japanese culture and who don't speak Japanese, makes perfect sense. At the end of the day, you want people to enjoy the show. A Google Translate translation is just not going to work. So then, how do you draw the line between translating to make it easier for the audience to understand and trying to improve jokes and change dialogue? I do think it can be a bit muddy. It can be unclear. Sometimes you are trying to make a joke easier to understand for your target audience, and when you're trying to improve a joke that wasn't funny. I don't really see the big deal if the dubbers cross the line occasionally. I guess the argument is if they are changing a lot, they leave themselves open to turn something that was funny into something not funny. However, I think the people that are rightly concerned about this greatly underestimate how bad a literal translation would be. If you try, you might fail, but if you don't try, you would never succeed. To get back to the original joke, I wouldn't consider either to be a banger, but I think Marchi's version is funnier than the subtitled version. While I see that most people disagree with me and prefer the subtitle version, is Jamie Marchi writing a bad joke really worth all this backlash he is getting? This has been the logical conclusions of anime reviews. Please like, comment, and subscribe.